We are now going to talk about who the various parties in the financial system are and how the financial system functions. So let's go to the figure from the book. Here we are seeing the flow of funds in the financial system, sort of a simplified view of the system. And the big players here are the savers, right, in the orange box. So this is where the capital comes from, right? So think of these as investors. So they have excess capital and they lack the economic opportunities to use that capital. So they are willing to invest that money in other people's opportunities via the financial system. And this can be households, businesses, and governments. So pretty much anybody with excess savings that want to invest those savings can be these savers that we see in this flow of funds. The asterisk there on the figure says this is the type of savers that we are going to primarily focus in this course is going to be the households investing. And then ultimately, where does the money go? Remember, reallocation of capital, the money is going to the users of the financial system. And these are mainly households, businesses, and governments that have economic opportunities, but they lack the capital to realize those valuable economic opportunities. So they use the financial system to get their hands on the resources. And we are going to primarily focus in this course on businesses and especially corporations, which we'll get to soon. So think of this as, for our purposes, think of it as the flow of funds from investors in the households, right, towards mainly corporations is our main interest. This will go through the flow of capital, will go through financial markets, various financial markets. Our two main interests will be the stock market. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about stock market in part 4 and the debt markets in part 3, but there are other markets as well, commodity derivatives, currency markets, right, depending on what type of financial transaction is taking place. Now, another very important group of players in this flow of funds, in this simplified picture, is the financial intermediaries. So when you're talking about, banks, mutual funds, lots of different types of financial institutions, there is a large group, financial advisors, financial planners. So there's a large group of players here whose main goal is to act as sort of the bridge between the savers and users and to facilitate these financial transactions. Okay, so we're going to spend some time talking about them, and there's an interesting question there. Why do these financial intermediaries exist? And that's an important question because we pay, meaning we, the system, the users and savers, pay financial intermediaries big bucks for their services. Now let's talk about what motivates the suppliers to provide the capital into the system. If you notice the arrows, the black arrows going in one way from savers to users, that's the capital allocation to the users. And then you see the gray arrows coming back. So what's going on here? So that's what the savers are expecting in return for their investment into the system is the bigger dollar signs, right? So they're hoping to be compensated for their investment by receiving some sort of financial return, which will compensate them for a combination of the opportunity cost of not having access to their capital during this time period, and which can be very long time period, as well as the risk that they are taking on, because there's no guarantee that the productive uses or productive seeming opportunities they're investing in will actually be realized and will be successful. So they are hoping to get some sort of financial reward. This is a very, very important topic in finance, this risk-return relationship. And this is something that we're going to spend a lot of time talking about later on in the course. Another important thing we should talk about before we move on is what would a well-functioning system look like, right? So you look at this figure, what would we hope for? What would we expect to call it a system that's working well and functioning well? First, as we talked about before, we would hope that the allocation of resources is towards their most productive use. But while that's happening, another thing we would hope is that there would be as little waste as possible in the system, with all these complex system, with all these different parties acting. we would want this system to work as efficiently as possible with as little waste as possible, so that as much capital as possible can go towards those most productive uses, and companies, businesses that are growing and that are being innovative and hiring people and paying good wages, right? So as little waste as possible and as productive use of capital as possible.